You are here. You are working miracles. I worship you. I worship you. I call it way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. Love is who you are. Yeah. Miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God. Lift up your hands, say, I worship you, Jesus. I worship you. You are, we call you Waymaker, Promise Keeper. My God, my God. Wave your hands to Jesus. We call away all tears. You mend the broken heart. You're the answer to it all. You wipe away all tears. You mend every broken life. You're the answer to it all.
Welcome to Daily Word. My name is Apostle Clement, Senior Pastor of International Tree of Life Church in Frederick, Maryland. Today, I would like to talk to you about a very important subject, and especially with everything that is happening today around the world. In the midst of difficulty lies opportunity. It's true that sometimes life cannot be fair, or we're going through something in life, and especially in this time when many people lost their job, many people don't know what to do, many people have used their savings. It's just to tell you that there are crises that happen in the Bible, but the Lord helped all these people who went through crisis to overcome those crises by finding opportunity in the middle of a crisis. Let's look at the story of Joseph in the book of Genesis chapter 37, verse 1 to 12. The Bible says that God gave a dream and a vision to Joseph. But Joseph had to go through several crises in order to find who he really was and what he was made of. Because sometimes a crisis will reveal who we are. Sometimes for many years, many people have been comfortable with maybe what they have been saving, with their job. It's just to tell you that this pandemic has taught us that nothing sometimes may be stable in life. But in the midst of crisis, God will always find opportunity for his children. Joseph went through several crises, and we will see how he overcome all of them. In every crisis, there is an opportunity. A crisis may be a loss of a job, as I say, loss of finances, loss of your house, loss of a place where you stay. But how do you respond to a crisis will determine if you're going to get out of that crisis. Instead of focusing on the crisis like many people do, it's better for you to ask yourself, what is my opportunity that God has given me in the midst of this crisis? So sometimes many people respond different way. Some may respond by being angry at God. Some may respond by become very hostile. Or some may become angry at someone, because it's always easy to find somebody to blame. Somebody may be upset at the government of the country because of the crisis that they're going through. But God always teaches many things. The Bible saying, look at this. When God gave a dream to Joseph, Joseph revealed the first dream to his brother, and the Bible said they hated him. How many times when you share something important or a vision or a revelation that God has given you, sometimes people will hate you. Don't always expect that people will clap for you. But the Bible says to confirm what God was trying to do in the life of Joseph, the Bible says that he gave him a second dream and he came and shared it with his brother. Look at Genesis chapter 37, verse 1 to 4. But I'm going to read verse 4. He say, but its brother hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. They couldn't say any kind word of him. But look at what happened here. Joseph went through several crises. Look at crisis number 1. The Bible says Joseph was hated by his own brother. Does it sound familiar? How many of us sometimes, Jesus said one day, men will have enemies, people of his own house. When you look at witchcraft, for example, many times witchcraft does not come from far. It comes from family, your bloodline. So look at this. The Bible says Joseph was hated by his brother 3 times. Think about how hard it is to be hated by somebody that it's not from your own bloodline. How much more harder it is when somebody from your own bloodline hates you, because simply you share a dream and the vision about what God has put in your heart. Look at number 2. The Bible says Joseph was thrown in the pit. How many of us today, you feel like you're being thrown in the pit because of what is going on? You look at and you say, God, where are you? Where have you been? I need you. This is the time where I need you. It feels like you are in the pit right now. But let me tell you one thing. When you are in the pit, it feels like you can't move left, you can't move right, you can't move front and back. But there is one direction that you can look. You can look above. And the Bible says that I'm looking at the mountain where my help comes from. And my help will come from the Lord, because he made heaven and earth. When you are in the midst of a crisis, instead of focusing on the crisis itself, instead of looking for someone to blame, shift your focus to God. Tell God, why? The Bible says that bad things happen to good people, but the Lord will set them free from them all. So it's to tell you that sometimes God will permit crisis to come in our lives. Joseph was put in the pit. Look at this. Even in the pit, Joseph learned how to trust God and depend on God alone. Many times we say we love God. Say, Lord, I need you. I depend on you. But God will test our faith sometime when we find ourselves in the midst of a crisis. We're going to learn how to depend on Jehovah Jireh, because it's the God that say he will provide to all our need. Remember, when Abraham was taking Isaac for sacrifices, the Bible say that the son asked his father, he said, Father, where's the lamb for the sacrifices? And Abram learned how to trust God in the midst of crisis. Do you know how hard it is when somebody comes to you and tell you, I want you to sacrifice your son, the son of the promise, not Ishmael, but Isaac. It was hard for Abraham, but in the midst of the crisis, Abraham learned how to trust God. And he said, this is the response of someone who learned how to trust God in the midst of a crisis. He said to his son, he said, son, the Lord will provide. My God, that's the language of someone who have trust in God in the midst of the crisis. But let me tell you one thing. A crisis, one crisis will prepare you for the next one. A lot of time we say, God, take me to the next level. Lord, use me powerfully. But the anointing come with the price. The Bible say, when David was taking care of the sheep of his son, he went through small crisis, several crises. The crisis David went through was the lion and the bear. The Bible say they came to attack the sheep, and David will come after them and kill them. David didn't know that one day in the midst of the crisis, when Israel was in war with the Philistine, when they were facing the giant, when David came, he saw an opportunity, my God, in the midst of the crisis. He asked the people, he said, what the king said that should happen to the person who killed this giant? They repeated to him, saying that it's going to be tax exempt and the king will give his own daughter to that person. And the Bible says word was brought to King Saul, and they sent forth for David. And when David came, King Saul looked at him and say, you are just a little boy. But let me tell you, when God prepare you during small crisis that we're facing, this pandemic revealed to us who we are as a Christian or as a person. Do we depend on God? It's easy to say, I depend on God when we are not facing crisis. But God is testing us again. Would you trust Him with your finances? Would you trust Him with your wealth? Would you trust Him with all the things that you have? The Bible says it was in the middle of crisis when God sent Elijah. He said, go into Zarephath. I have ordered a widow to feed you. God was testing that widow. Now when everything was fine, but when there was the middle of a crisis, people were starving, people didn't have food to eat. But it was during that time that God wanted to bless the widow. And the test, He sent a servant, not even telling the widow that his servant was coming. But she used discernment to understand that this man was a man of God sent by God. He was an angel sent by God to bring a blessing. Because Jesus said, whoever receive you, they receive me. And if you give a cup of water to one of my servants, you will not lack your blessing in this present time and in the coming time. And when she was able to discern and provide first for the man of God, because he was sent there by God, the Bible says food never lacked into her home. But look at this. The Bible says the story of Job. Job went through several crises. What makes us grow spiritually as men is when we face trial and tribulation, when we face crisis. That will teach us and show us the level, our maturity level. Because a lot of times we say we are mature spiritually, but a crisis will test if you are or not. The greater the test and the trial, the better the growth. After Jesus passed the trial, the crisis of the cross, the Bible says He received a name above all names. Think about Daniel. Daniel was falsely accused by his co-worker when the king was planning to promote him. And Daniel quickly found himself in the pit of the lion den. And the Bible says even in the midst of the crisis, Daniel trusted the Lord. He prayed to God during the crisis. He went 3 times a day in the upper room and praying to God, knowing that a decree was signed. Daniel's focus was on the Lord, and the Bible say the Lord set him free. And after the crisis came the promotion. Now look at Job. The Bible say everything was fine in the life of Job, but until Job went through the crisis. Sometimes we think we know God better, but let me tell you, a crisis will reveal sometime our level of faith, our maturity, how well we know God. The Bible say, look at Job 42 verse 5 say, Job say after the crisis, he say, I had only heard about you before, my God. But after the crisis, he say, but now I have seen you with my own eyes. Now I got to know you during the crisis. I got to trust you more, knowing that my life is in your hands. The enemy can take everything you have, but as long as you are alive, there are many people who die. There are many people who passed away during this pandemic. It might be loved one, it might be friend, people that we know. But if we're still alive, it's a grace from God, because God still have a pen on His hands and want to write the story, a book about your life, because you came here on earth to fulfill a purpose. And the dream that God showed you, the revelation that you receive, The prophecy that was given to you many, many years ago. When you look at in your book, you can still see the prophecy, the promises that God has given to you. And the Bible says that the promise of God are yes and amen into our life. The Bible says when God made a promise to Abraham to give him a child, the Bible says he fulfilled that promise after Abraham waited patiently. The Bible says here, Joseph became a slave in Egypt. That was another crisis. The Bible says Joseph was purchased by the captain of Pharaoh. He found himself quickly as a slave in the house of Potiphar. Genesis 39 verse 1 to 6. There was an opportunity for Joseph. When Joseph arrived in the house of Potiphar, he was not the only slave. Sometimes we think when we're going through a crisis, we are the only one. Paul say, knowing that there are other brothers and sisters who are going through the same crisis. Now, Joseph saw an opportunity in the midst of the crisis. The Bible say, being in the house of Potiphar, he began to learn the language of the Egyptian. He find an opportunity. The Bible says also Joseph learned the upper class in Egypt, how they operate. Because remember, his destiny was not in the house of Potiphar, but it was in the palace. The Bible says he learned how to become a great leader. That's why Potiphar put him in charge of his household and other slaves. Joseph learned how the ways of the family of the Egyptian function. He also learned the Egyptian culture. The Bible says he also learned how to become a great manager. How can you manage a country when you cannot manage a small group? Joseph saw an opportunity to improve himself in the house of Potiphar. How many of us, when we find ourselves in the midst of a crisis, we find an opportunity to learn. I was telling many people that at the beginning of this crisis, this is an opportunity for you to learn, to add a skill, because soon the crisis will end and the opportunities will open up for you. Look at this. Joseph, being in the house of Potiphar, took time to learn, as I mentioned. He wasn't the only slave. We are not the only people who are going through a crisis. Look at number 5. Joseph was framed. He was accused falsely by the wife of Potiphar. Genesis chapter 37, verse 7 to 19. And the Bible say Potiphar's wife tried, my God, to seduce Joseph, and so that this was an opportunity for Joseph to discover who he was. A lot of time we say, I am ready. A lot of time we say, God sent me, I will go. God will put you to test. And Joseph was put to test, and the Bible say he discovered that day, he learned how to say no to every advance of the enemy. Just like Jesus, when Satan came and say, if you are a son of God, turn this stone into bread. And he say, men shall not live by bread only, but every word that shall come out of the mouth of God. Jesus was tested when he was in a sort of a crisis, because when you fasting, you are weak. And that's when Satan came. When Job lost everything, he was in a stage of depression. He was in a stage of hardship. And that's when the enemy came, pushing Job to curse God and die, but he didn't do it. Now look at this. Joseph was thrown into prison. Even in prison, Joseph could easily blame God, like many blame God in the midst of a crisis. But Joseph quickly became in charge of the prisoner. After learning in the house of Potiphar, Joseph learned how to become a leader again in prison. He grew in a family where they did not treat him right, in pain and rejection and suffering. Joseph was not in jail because he has done something. We are not in crisis because we have done something. But sometimes a crisis, behind every crisis, there is an opportunity. But he was falsely accused, but he responded by caring about the prisoner whom he was in charge of. And soon, when Joseph went through the preparation during the crisis, then an opportunity opened. The Bible says one day everything changed. Joseph was called in the palace because Pharaoh needed him there. And all this year in crisis taught Joseph how to be ready, how to prepare himself. And the Bible says when opportunity came, Joseph quickly found himself in the palace, and he was given a dream to interpret. But because he was ready, the Bible says he gave the interpretation to Pharaoh, and the Bible says Joseph finally was established because Pharaoh said, I have found no man as wise, as intelligent as Joseph. And when the opportunity came, he was ready. How many of us we lost opportunity? Let me tell you one thing. COVID, the pandemic, all these things will pass away. We have several crises in the past in the world, but we faced them all. COVID was just another one as well. It's gonna pass, but opportunity will come from us, for us, by God in the midst of crisis. But if you didn't take time to learn and to sharpen your gift, to sharpen your skill, when the opportunity comes, many of you, many people may lose that opportunity. You still got time to learn. You still got time to understand that understanding God sometime will allow a situation to happen for a reason, because God is omniscient. He knows that what is painful for us today will be profitable for us tomorrow. It will be profitable for you. When a crisis comes, we have the opportunity to discover not only something about God, but something about ourselves, what we are made of, our strength and our weaknesses. And the more the opposition, the more the opportunity. We always tend to complain during difficult time, but difficult time will reveal who we are, what we are made of, and who is with us and who is against us. Because as you know, when crisis come, many people that you call friend, you will know if they are your friend or not. Because in the midst of crisis, it will reveal who you are, who you hang out with, who are your friend and who are not. And God bless you. And I hope that this word was a blessing to you and your family. Remember, in the midst of a crisis lies opportunities. And God has given you an opportunity today during this crisis to open a business, to sharpen a gift, to write a book, to work on your vision for your business, for your company, for your organization. You need to take advantage of the time God has given you, and you will achieve greatness. Remember, He say in Jeremiah 29:11, for the plan that I have for you is a plan to prosper you, to give you hope, not to harm you. God bless you, and see you next time on Daily Word. God bless you.
We thank you for worshiping with us today. We hope you were blessed by the service and the message. Here are our live stream weekly program. Join us every Sundays for our worship service at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. For French speakers, join our French service every Sundays at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. You can also listen to Apostle Clement MBUYI on School Days Radio every Sundays from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Watch the Revealed Word podcast hosted by Teddy Butler every Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for a series of dynamic teachings that will change your life. You can also watch Apostle Clement on the Word Network, the largest African American Christian network in the world, every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time for a dynamic time of deliverance and restoration. You can also join our Deliverance live stream service every Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Unlock your potential and unleash your greatness by joining the Women's Ministry every Saturdays from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Eastern Time through conference line by calling 480-297-0773 using access code 779-1751. For newcomers, please feel free to connect with us online at www.internationaltreeoflife.org. Prayer can solve a multitude of problems, and we would like to pray for you and your family. Please send us your prayer request at treeoflife.church@yahoo.com or call 800-671-3198. Thanks for your generosity, as your giving is making a difference in our ministry, and help us fulfill the Great Commission by spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ to all nations and support those who are in need. Here are different ways you can give your tithes, offerings, and special seeds. You can send through Cash App at $INTLTREEOFLIFE, Zelle at 240-422-1204 or give online at www.internationaltreeoflife.org/donate. Thank you and have a blessed week and see you next time.